Alan Greenspan is dead, and with him, an entire era of American finance has come to a close. The man who led the Federal Reserve for nearly 2 decades, longer than any other chair in history, passed away this weekend at the age of 100 from complications of Parkinson's disease. He was the most powerful central banker the world has ever seen. And whether you loved him or hated him, his decisions shaped every dollar in your pocket, every mortgage you've ever signed, and every market crash you've lived through. In the next 10 minutes, we're going to talk about who Greenspan was, the decisions he made that changed America forever, and what his legacy means for the economy you're living in right now. Because understanding Greenspan isn't just history. It's the key to understanding the Federal Reserve today, and why the decisions Kevin Warsh is making right now echo choices Greenspan made decades ago. So who was Alan Greenspan? He was born in New York City in 1926, the same year the Roaring Twenties were at their peak, just 3 years before the stock market crash that triggered the Great Depression. That timing, economists later said, shaped everything about how he thought about risk. Greenspan studied economics at NYU and later earned his PhD from Columbia. But unlike most academics, he built his reputation as a private consultant, advising corporations and Wall Street firms before Richard Nixon appointed him as chairman of the Council of Economic Advisers in 1974. Then in 1987, President Ronald Reagan named him chairman of the Federal Reserve. He would hold that job for 18 years, through 6 presidents, 4 recessions, the dot-com boom, the dot-com crash, the 9/11 attacks, and the early signs of the housing bubble that would eventually destroy trillions of dollars in wealth. His era at the Fed was defined by one thing above all: low interest rates. Greenspan became famous, and eventually infamous, for keeping rates extremely low for extended periods, fueling economic growth but also fueling asset bubbles. The late 90s tech boom, Greenspan's easy money helped inflate it. The housing bubble of the 2000s, his decision to keep rates near historic lows after the dot-com crash played a major role in supercharging it. His supporters called him a genius. His critics called him the architect of the 2008 financial crisis. In a stunning moment before Congress in 2008, as the global financial system was collapsing, Greenspan admitted he had been wrong. He had trusted that financial markets would self-correct. He hadn't anticipated the greed and recklessness that cheap money would unleash on Wall Street. His exact words, "I found a flaw. I don't know how significant or permanent it is, but I've been very distressed by that fact." That admission from the most powerful central banker in history sent shockwaves through the financial world. For decades, Greenspan had been treated almost like a financial oracle. The term greenspeak was coined to describe his deliberately vague and complex statements that markets hung on every word of. Now, why does this matter today? Because the Federal Reserve's new chair, Kevin Warsh, is facing many of the same temptations Greenspan faced. With inflation still above 3% and the economy growing, Warsh signaled last week that rates could go higher, not lower. He's explicitly rejecting the playbook of easy money. Many economists see Warsh as a deliberate contrast to Greenspan: blunter, more hawkish, less willing to let markets run on cheap debt. Whether that's the right approach is something only time will tell. But Greenspan's legacy is a warning that even the most brilliant minds can get it wrong when the incentive to keep the party going is strong enough. The housing market, the dot-com crash, the 2008 global financial crisis, they all share a common thread: an era of cheap money that eventually came due. The question now is whether the Fed under Kevin Warsh will have the discipline to avoid making the same mistakes, or whether the pressures of a slowing economy will eventually force them to cut rates and risk reigniting inflation. Greenspan died as one of the most consequential figures in American economic history, but his legacy is a complicated one, A story of extraordinary competence and one catastrophic blind spot. The Federal Reserve is still living in his shadow, and in many ways so are we. If you want to stay ahead of what's happening in the economy before it hits the mainstream news, subscribe now. We post every single day covering the financial stories that actually affect your life. I'll see you in the next one.